Hi, everybody. Welcome to the course of world history. Mr. Samuelson again, and today we're looking at the Aztec civilization. So our essential question today is, how did the Aztec Empire rise to power? We'll be looking at their decline and collapse a little bit today and then in greater detail in a later lesson. Today we're going to be talking about their rise. So who are the Aztecs? Well, the Aztecs are a group that migrated from northern Mexico into central Mexico around 1300 CE. So they were facing some pressure from their neighbors in the north. They decided they have to get out of there, and they migrated down to the south. But in the south, they quickly rose to power and ruled most of Mexico and Central America until about 1520. So they have a period of about 300 years of power. And actually, they were quite powerful right up to the year before they collapsed. The Aztecs, once they moved into central and southern Mexico, were able to examine the culture and beliefs of the Mayan people and look at some of the architecture that had been left behind. And they were able to incorporate a lot of the Mayan knowledge into building their own civilization. So, how did they wind up where they were? This came as a message from the Aztec gods. Before arriving in central Mexico, the Aztec had been hunter-gatherers, just tribal people moving around northern Mexico. And they lacked this sort of central power and organization needed to defend themselves. So when the Aztec people were attacked, they were too fragmented with not enough unity of leadership to really defend themselves. Now, in response to this, an Aztec god spoke to the Aztec priests and instructed them that they needed to move south and create a settlement, and that this settlement wound up being in the middle of Lake Texcoco. Now, this is kind of a fun story here. They were supposed to look out for a specific symbol. You would see a hawk eating a serpent while standing on a cactus. And this was the symbol that the priests were looking for to show them where they should settle their city. And that was what they found on this island in the middle of this lake, this incredibly defensible island in the middle of a lake. To this day, when you look at the Mexican flag, this is the image that you see, the image that was a part of this Aztec culture. Now, this city that they settled on the island in Lake Texcoco, they named Tenochtitlan. Now, this city, Tenochtitlan, grew rapidly, highly defensible, good food supply nearby, and pretty quickly it was up to 100,000 people. Now, this is at a time where very, very few European cities could match this size. It was massive. Now, Tenochtitlan did sit on this island, and they had three main causeways off of that island to get onto the land. So if you wanted to assault it, you needed to assault by boat or travel these long bridges that were exposed to defensive fire. Over time, the city builds pyramids and builds schools, builds parks. They built a zoo here. They had a collection of wild animals that people could go and see. It developed into quite an advanced city as the center of quite an advanced civilization. This is what the downtown area of Tenochtitlan looked like. So conquest, trade, and religion, what do? Well, once settled, the Aztecs focus on projecting their power outward. They want to go out and they want to conquer their neighbors and create a nice buffer zone between their city and anybody who else might attack them. Their growing wealth allowed them to trade with people. And there have been trade goods from the Aztec found as far away as the Mississippi River, and Mississippi River goods found in Central America. So there was an extensive trade network that connected the Aztecs with, as far away as the central area of North America. Their wealth largely went to the powerful priests, and the priests used this wealth to then build large temples to the Aztec gods. We saw an image of one of those temples right here. This would be a temple to their god of the sun and god of war. And that was part of that religion. So the god of the sun and war would demand regular sacrifices. So this gets into the more gruesome parts of the Aztec religion and society. So the Aztecs did wage this constant war, and part of that was to acquire people for the sacrifices. Because at the top of this pyramid, every morning at sunrise and every day at sunset, twice a day, there were human sacrifices, sacrifices to the gods. So kind of a violent society. Now, these are images here of Aztec warriors decked out in armor with shields. This was a weapon called a mahuatl. It's a piece of wood with jagged, sharp edges of obsidian. Place right there. Obsidian is extremely sharp. Now, it's fragile compared to iron and steel, but it is sharper than iron or steel. So it was quite an effective weapon, especially when going up against enemies that did not have, steel armor. So let's talk about their last leader, Montezuma, or technically Montezuma II. Under Montezuma, the tribute the Aztecs demanded from their neighbors increased. So the neighbors had to produce more food, more wealth, more slaves, more sacrifices to the Aztec people. And the Aztecs demanded so much of the people that the Aztecs, and Montezuma in particular, were becoming very unpopular. Their neighbors didn't like them quite so much and became less willing to accept Aztec rule. But they weren't powerful enough to stop them. By this point, the Aztecs were wealthy, powerful, unpopular, but people couldn't get rid of them. An open warfare against the Aztecs usually just led to more people being sacrificed, more people being killed, more death within their society. If you want to look at this, we have our core states right around Tecnola. So these were the Aztec people. Here's a close ally of theirs. And everybody else, these are their subject tributary states. So people who are forced to accept Aztec rule, but don't necessarily want it. You can see that's quite a large number of people. So the Aztec decline, how do they decline? Well, it was the fastest decline of a major world power in world history because the Aztecs were pretty darn close to their peak of power in 1519. Okay, nobody could seriously threaten them. They felt no external threats. And then in 1520, their empire was done. 1 year. And it had to do with the arrival of Spanish conquistadors and a disease that they brought with them called smallpox. Now, the Spaniard who showed up, this conquistador, was a man by the name of Hernan Cortez, this fella right here. We're going to get much more into that fall and the details of the fall in a later lesson, but that is all for today. I hope you learned something and enjoyed this lesson. I'll see you next time, and farewell.